Hello everyone, this is Krazy, aka Why Must I Sign In, and this is going to be, as complete as possible, a guide to reaching the Conqueror section of the season journey and completing it, and likewise getting the stash unlocked, which is the main appeal of getting the Conqueror section of the season journey complete. I did plan 3 characters. Now, the thing to... Let me turn the volume a little bit, actually. Okay. Should be a little better. I play with the volume a little bit up when I'm just kind of doing my own thing, but when I'm talking to you, I probably should have it down a bit. Anyway, so... Looking at, what I've been doing here, where is it gonna... So, this is the main that I've been playing. She's the best geared of the 3 seasonal hardcore characters I did, and she's the only one that I made fresh for the season. Demon Hunter has always kind of been my main. I did a hardcore barbarian for a long time, right when Diablo 3 came out, but I definitely played my Demon Hunter on softcore even more. But for this season, this has definitely been my main. Demon Hunters are not meta right now, which is a short way of saying that when you get into the very, very late in-game, Demon Hunters will have a slightly harder time pushing the highest level of Greater Rifts solo than other classes. Not monks and Demon Hunters are kind of in equally rough spots, but generally I think there's 3 that are regarded as the best right now, but it's basically wizards and barbarians are in the best place right now when it comes to the high end. But for what I'm doing right here for the Conqueror section of the season journey, Demon Hunter is perfectly fine. So if you want to do the season journey, really, I believe you can do it on any class, and you don't have to be an MLG or a pro to do so. It will take some time, so as you can see on this character, who was created just for this season, and who, this is indicating from level 1 to Conqueror season journey complete, took me about 50 hours. So, I think that you can get about that amount. You can probably beat that amount of time to get the Conqueror complete. You can probably beat it by, you can shave 5 or 10 hours off that. One thing to note here is that there are a lot of things I did that were suboptimal, and I'll be indicating how you could do that even better, so you could do it in less than 50 hours. I did have some time where, and likewise some Paragon levels that I got on my Wizard and my Monk. But most of the hours on here are from when these were actual hardcore characters. These are 2 characters that used to be normal hardcore that I converted into seasonal characters, so the time played on them reflects the total time I've played the character, rather than just how much time I spent on the season journey. So I don't actually know how much I played on them because I forgot to check before I started. But I would say it's about 50 hours. So I'm going to be going over all the skills and stuff in-game, but I do want to go ahead and look at the requirements of the Conqueror season journey. So here's the ones. Show me what you got. For some of you, depending on which class you're playing, this will happen very, very easily. The Demon Hunter has 1 gear group that is basically ideal for doing this, and I'll be going over that. Money ain't a thing. Slay greed on Torment X difficulty. This will happen if you're playing Diablo 3. Like, this will basically be done before most of your other sections of the season journey on every difficulty. Like, you will be done. You will not be done with, like, chapter 4 by the time you are getting this one done. A little more. Reach greater level 60 solo. This is one of the 2 hardest ones to get done. But it is definitely doable on a Demon Hunter, and it is definitely doable just generally. Like you don't have to be MLG to be able to do this. You just have to go at it well and have a plan and find some good gear. 4 minutes to save the world. Finish a level 70 Nephilim Rift on Torment X difficulty within 4 minutes. If you're playing in public games, this should also happen pretty much just on its own. Just as you're grinding out Greater Rift Stones, you'll probably get in one where you'll just get a couple of good towers, and you'll get, speed and power or something like that, and it will just happen. Gem of My Life. There's a pretty good chance this will be the last one you get complete, depending on how you play. The last one you get done will be one of these three. A little more Gem of My Life, or All I Do Is Win. For me, this was the last one I got done, but it's definitely doable as well, because basically as soon as you can do this one will just happen over the course of time, so long as you don't die, if you're playing in hardcore mode. And All I Do Is Win. I did this a very awkward, suboptimal way, but I'll tell you what I think is actually probably the easiest way to do this. So to do this, let's go ahead and click this. So now I would be moving on to Guardian each level. I've already done the hardest of the core, but I don't know if I'm ever going to do... Well, I could do Flawless Victory pretty easily, but I don't know about some of these other ones, whether they will ever get done. Oh, maybe Guardian of Sanctuary I actually might get done if I go back into parties. And get Swifty. You can probably do about 4 of these. The 2 that are actually hard are We Don't Stop and Gem Fatale. So I'm going to go ahead and jump into a game and just kind of go over my build and what's in my cube and everything else. And the alternatives, right? So in a lot of guides, they don't go over what you can get away with not doing. And I'll give a pretty good sense of what those are. So it's kind of a lot of questions of where do you start when you're thinking through, okay, what will an in-game Demon Hunter look like? And the most consistent one I find is actually right here in the cube. This is basically going to be what almost everyone in the top almost 1,000 of Demon Hunters are going to look like right now, in hardcore mode at least. Dawn, reduce the cooldown of Vengeance by 65%. Visage of Goons, Vengeance gains the effect of the Dark Heart rune. And Convention of Elements. So you can get each of these by extracting legendary powers. You basically just farm bounties. And if you're on Torment 1, you farm all the bounties, you get 6 each, and you can basically, would at that point have enough mats to extract all of these, and you're good to go. So you basically have to do 1 round of bounties and then get the items, which takes the longer amount of time. So with the weapon, what other things could you go for here? And there definitely are other things you might think about. Maybe if you wanted to, if you didn't have this, would you want to use this? And the thing is you're going to, in 2 of the 3 kind of top builds, you're going to want a 2-handed bow. Not necessarily Wind Force, by the way, and I'll get on that when I talk about gear. But generally, I don't think you're going to be able to be using Bombardiers here even if you're going Marauders, you're going to want to actually be using a Bombardiers. When I was very early on, when I was back in like Torment 1 for a little while, you're going to get an Envious Blade really easily just as soon as you're doing bounties. You'll get a couple Envious Blades. I don't think when you're in Torment 1 to... Basically, Torment 1 to 6, you can use stuff like this, and you'll probably be fine. Ingam is very important for Wizards and Monks and several other of their builds. For Demon Hunter, I don't feel like it's going to make as big of a difference. When you're still on the Shadow set, you might want to have an extracted Carlay's Point, so that you can use other weapons more easily in your main hand, but eventually you're going to want to move past the Shadow Hunters, or the Shadow set anyway. And beyond that, I mean, actually, the thing about Manticore is that people think that Manticores are very good, the item, and you're like, well, does that mean that I just want to use Manticore as my Q power? And the answer is no, because what really makes Manticore so strong, if you look at it, is that it's doing two different things, one of which is orange and one of which isn't. This is a bad Manticore, but it demonstrates the core concept of the weapon. It reduces the hatred cost of cluster arrow, but it also increases cluster arrow damage by up to 80%. So it's the combination of those two. It's not just the hatred cost reduction that makes Manticore such a strong weapon. A good Manticore, that is. You know, an ancient Manticore, not that garbage that I was leaving in my stash as an example. So what else does that leave you, right? I mean, for a while I was using... you might want to use Shard of Hate on some other characters, but the thing is that most of Demon Hunter is going to be using Fire, and Shard of Hate doesn't have a Fire proc, so... Nope. And you just go through and you're like, okay, Yang's basically has the same issue as Manticore, which is that the main appeal of it is the multi-shot bonus damage. So really, out of everything in here, Dawn is really the best option, because you want to have Vengeance up as much as possible, especially in combination with Visage of Goons. And so why is that? Why not use something else, right? Vengeance with Seath gives you 10 hatred per second. And it does all this other bonus damage too, but the main appeal here is that with Visage of Goons, and with the cooldown reduction of Dawn, you're going to have almost permanent 50% damage reduction, right? You're going to have 45 seconds of... It sounds like you're going to have a cooldown of 45 seconds, or actually less than that, about 40 seconds of cooldown. But it lasts 20 seconds. And so if you have something like cooldown reduction in your hat, or cooldown reduction on... I actually don't even have that much other cooldown reduction, I think. Oh, I have 7% cooldown on my Bombardier's Rucksack as well. So with 19.5% cooldown reduction, that means that there's only going to be 5 to 10 seconds of downtime on Vengeance whenever you're using it, which means if you have... I like to use Smokescreen, so that basically as soon as Vengeance goes down, I can, if necessary, pop Smokescreen. Then after just 1 or 2 Smokescreens, Vengeance is back up. So you're never at a point where you're lacking that 50% damage reduction, except for just very small bursts of time. And if you do get hit, in hardcore mode, you have awareness on. And in hardcore mode, you just always have awareness on. So these three are all working together to just give you basically permanent 50% damage reduction is what's going on there. And this is why this combination of abilities, in combination with the 10 hatred per second, so that you can continue to spam multi-shot, or if you have a good Manticore cluster arrow, means that you will not die a lot. You will be not dying all the time. You will in fact be staying alive. Now, there are of course other options in this slot, much more so than with the weapon slot. But I think that Visage of Goons is still just generally the best, because when you have the rings, Visage of Goons is going to be your best option here. Before you have the rings, you know, if you're going to at some point be wearing a Ring of Royal Grandeur, you might actually throw a Visage of Goons on your head instead of your set piece helm. And then you could throw something else in this slot if that was the case, right? So while you're continuing to grind up, maybe if you do have enough set pieces from the Marauder set, you could, and you don't have a Zoe's Secret that's any good, you could be using Zoe's Secret. You could even be using Wraps of Clarity. There's actually a lot of really good armor pieces. St. Archu's Gauge so that you have the big bubble. Basically you will not die for 10 seconds every time you meet an elite pack, which a lot of the time is as long as an elite pack will stay alive. So that's nice. If you're not doing multi-shot, if you're doing some sort of strafe build, obviously you're going to want a Mantle of Channeling. But one thing to even think of here is the Leoric's Crown. You could throw Leoric's Crown, double down on the cooldown reduction of your gym, then you have basically 25% cooldown reduction. If, you could combine that with Dawn even, and you could, in that way, pretty much have permanent vengeance. If you had some way that you didn't need Seethe, you could just use, right. Or if you were wearing a Visage of Goons, you had a Ring of Royal Grandeur, then you could do this and basically just always have vengeance up, just forever. It would never go down, and you would always have that 50% damage reduction, which would make you very, very strong. You can just look at it, right? It doubles your toughness. You now have 124 million toughness. It's pretty good. So yeah, there's definitely more options here if you are not going Restraint and Focus. Now, eventually you're probably going to want to go Restraint and Focus because you're going to want that extra damage. And as you're pushing up into 60, that's probably where you're going to want to go. But before you kind of have everything coming together, it might be the case that you're going to be using an Elusive Ring, probably with a Socket, none of these exactly, with a Ring of Royal Grandeur. And then you have a lot more options here as you're getting to that point where you have everything coming together. Now in rings, honestly, it's really going to be mostly convention of elements. I'm trying to think of what else you would even consider here. And nothing's really coming to mind. Yeah, the Ring of Royal Grandeur, if you could throw a Ring of Royal Grandeur in here and then be doing all that stuff I said with the armor tab. That really opens up the armor tab if you do find a good Visage of Goons to wear. Then you could use the Ring of Royal Grandeur and have a lot more diversity in your build that way. But most of the time, what's going to happen here is you're just going to end up with these three, and then that's going to be your cube for pretty much the rest of the game, and you'll just stop kind of thinking about it at that point. You'll basically almost never need to change that as you continue to level up and stuff. Unless you're not pushing higher greater rifts and instead like speed farming lower greater rifts for some reason, then you'll do whatever you want. But basically, if you're really trying to push the high-end greater rifts, that's what it's going to look like. Skills. So one thing that you'll notice here is I'm using Evasive Fire Focus, which is a cold-based ability. And I'm still using this not all that great Halcyon's Ascent with fire bonus damage. Now the thing to bear in mind here is, okay, Krazy, why on earth would you use Focus when you could be using a fire-based ability and be getting 17% bonus damage? You could go for Entangling Shot, Justice is Served, and that would actually be proccing your Call of the Week. And that is absolutely the case. That's a completely viable option. The reason I think that Evasive Fire Focus is the better option is because this can hit multiple enemies. And so, what this ability does is it combos with Zay's Stone of Vengeance so that you have a 20% chance to stun enemies, right, for each one you hit. So that means that if you're hitting multiple enemies at the same time, you're going to have a chance to stun multiple of them at the same time, whereas if you're using Entangling Shot, Justice is Served, then you're only going to be stunning one thing at a time, which is just slightly less efficient at crowd control, which is very, very, very important in hardcore mode. So if you don't have a level 25, Zay's Stone of Vengeance, then use whatever hatred generator you most like, right? I mean, at that point, for a long time, I was using even Thunderbolt just because I felt like it, just because I like the way bolos look when they explode. But basically, before you have a level 25 Zay's Stone of Vengeance, just use whatever hatred generator you feel like, because the hatred generator will not be doing most of your damage. Most of your damage will be coming from multi-shot. And so you can throw anything you want here until you have the Zay's Stone of Vengeance, at which point I would say Evasive Fire Focus is the best way to go. Arsenal combos with ballistics and custom engineering. Mostly ballistics, actually. So this fires 3 rockets that deal 300% weapon damage as fire, which becomes 400% with ballistics, which is a really great combination of damage that the multi-shot itself hits everything around, but the rockets really hit the bosses, the Rift Guardians, and just anything on its own very well. So I think pretty much everyone going multi-shot is going multi-shot Arsenal in combination with ballistics, because the bonus and damage is just undeniable. Vengeance and Seeth I kind of already went over. And so Smokescreen is something that I do that's a little different, that some might disagree on. And I'll come back to that one in a minute, because I'm using this partly because of my gear. Companion, Wolf Companion. Now, as you're leveling up, when you're in Torment 1 or Torment 3, and you're doing pretty good DPS, you feel good. You know, for a while I was running the Boar Companion, just because I was more worried about, you know, getting suddenly killed and having to worry about awareness popping. But basically, as soon as you start to push past Greater Rift 45, or even 40, basically as soon as you hit Greater Rift 40, I think you're going to want to switch to Wolf Companion and get used to it, because the 30% bonus damage at that point is just going to be too significant. You know, bear in mind that it says, yes, 30 seconds cooldown, but if you have a 19% or so cooldown reduction, you know, basically 20% cooldown reduction, this is going to be up a lot more than that. And so it will never reach the point of being completely permanent. But, and this is another point where you could think about, you know, what if you had a Ring of Royal Grandeur and you were using Leoric's Crown? You know, if you had 25% cooldown reduction, then you wouldn't quite have permanent 30% bonus damage on Wolf, but you'd have close. Now, would that still be worth it to lose the Convention of Elements? Absolutely not. Having 200% bonus damage basically every 4 seconds, or I'm sorry, not every 4 seconds. Every 16 seconds, you have 4 seconds of bonus damage. So effectively, you have 100% bonus damage for 1 second every 4 seconds. I don't know, it would at least be worth considering. It's something you could play around with on your own. But generally, I think that this combination of skills and gear is going to be a little bit better. Not so much if you don't have, you know, Restraint and Focus, and you do have a decently rolled Ring of Royal Grandeur. Or you want to cube Ring of Royal Grandeur and do something else with your rings. I think that's where you're going to really find the more diversity opening up. But when you look at the top 25 Demon Hunters in Hardcore, almost all of them are using Restraint and Focus. Right. So, Wolf Companion, Spitfire Turret, again, rockets, the end. You have ballistics up already because of Arsenal. You want to... I'm using Marauder's gear. So if you were not using Marauder's gear, if you were using not Natalia's, if you're using the Unhallowed Essence item set, then you're not going to have... You're still actually probably going to want the Wolf Companion, honestly. You won't have the other benefits of the companions, but you will probably still be using that. But at that point, you're going to be using preparation in combination with invigoration to increase your maximum discipline, because with this set you get 20% increased damage for every point of discipline you have. So that's basically what you would replace there. If you're on Marauders, though, you're already using Arsenal for multi-shot, you're going to be using Spitfire Turret. Some people do at some point, actually, if you push past 70, they use Polar Station, and so the appeal of this is that it makes it so that you proc Call of the Week even more. So that's something to think about, if you feel like the rockets from these turrets really aren't doing that much damage, you'd rather be having more creatures slowed for Call of the Week, which is giving your normal multi-shot 20% bonus damage. Yeah, that's definitely a viable option. I think you can go either way. I think the main reason that you would switch to Polar Station past Greater Rift 60 is because really just having even more crowd control is not going to hurt. But when you're just going from basically up to Greater Rift 60, I think Spitfire Turret is usually going to be the way to go. But you could use Polar Station. That's definitely an option there. Okay, the one thing that I do a little differently is Smokescreen. The usual here in most of the top 25 is going to be Vault with Tumble. Because Vault with Tumble is just, if you're going around killing stuff, if you're farming, lower Greater Rifts, if you're just doing normal Torment 10 Rifts, you're going to want to be able to move around the battlefield, get to the elites, avoid getting completely surrounded, and be where you want to be all the time. When I am just solo pushing high-end Greater Rifts, like around level 60, which for me is a high-end Greater Rift. I know some people are like at 70s and all this. I feel like basically 15% life regeneration every time I poke Smokescreen, with 1.5 seconds of invincibility, so that you can walk casually through a arcane, you can avoid a molten explosion. I feel like Smokescreen ends up being better off. Now, the thing you basically have to bear in mind here is you need to know your DPS, and you need to be confident that you can kill everything within... you can kill enough enemy monsters within 5 seconds, basically, that you won't die. Because if you can't do that, you basically just have to keep Vault on, right? You cannot not have Vault if you cannot also kill monsters efficiently enough to not get surrounded. So if you are in doubt, honestly, I would say to go with Vault. Me, I personally like to use Healing Vapors because I generally have a pretty good sense of positioning and my own damage. Well, that's going to be up to you. Custom Engineering is essential for the Marauders build. If you're not using Custom Engineering, most of them are going to go with, Thrill of the Hunt, so that everything you hit with your Evasive Fire. Again, now you're hitting 3 monsters with Evasive Fire. 3 enemies are getting slowed. So 3 enemies are going to be susceptible to Call of the Week for 20% bonus damage. Now, as you are just hitting Torment 1, before you have Bane of the Trapped up to rank 25, you might not actually be using Call of the Week. You might be using Ambush, or if you're killing a boss, Single Out. If you're going to go do a Diablo bounty or something. Yeah, it's like Ambush or maybe Steady Aim. The thing about Steady Aim is that what a lot of people like to do is they will try to get Steady Aim on their Hellfire Amulet. So basically, if you have the patience and the will and the energy to farm Hellfire Amulets, that's what you're going to want to do. Basically, a Hellfire Amulet with Steady Aim is going to be 20% better than this garbage Halcyon Amulet, which is, making things crowd-controlled when you use Vengeance. It's basically irrelevant. The orange text here is pointless. I'm really just using it for the 73% crit, which is low. This is a bad amulet. I've rerolled it so many times, but at this point I have 3 right now, but it just eats up these Imperial Emeralds. And that gets annoying because I haven't even maxed out some of my other gems. 17% fire damage and 865 dexterity. And then the socket for the Bane of the Trapped. Bane of the Trapped and Zaystone of Vengeance are really what you're going to use. I have this Molten Wildebeest just because I was doing this other random stuff earlier on. Actually, I was in public game Greater Rifts, just kind of lowish level, and when I'm doing just that sort of stuff, you can lose a little bit of DPS. Generally, what you're not gonna be using this Wildebeest thing. It's not that good. Most people are gonna be using Teguk. Now, the thing here is that I feel like Teguk is a lot harder to keep the stacks up on a Demon Hunter than it is on a Wizard, where you're going to be constantly spamming Explosive Blast with your Wand of Woe, or where you're a Barbarian and you're just always in Whirlwind forever. For a Demon Hunter, multi-shot, you do sometimes run out, which means you need to be constantly trying to get it back up. Every 3 seconds a multi-shot, which means you're going to lose it basically every time you change floors. And you're going to be losing it sometimes when you're just not paying attention for just literally 3 seconds. Which shouldn't happen that often, but every time it does happen, man, you notice. And so that's going to be basically the equivalent of 35% damage you're going to be losing if you have a high-end Teguk. The thing about Teguk is that it does allow you to get beyond that. And so once you get used to using Teguk, especially if you're on a Wizard or something else, or a Barbarian, Teguk is very easy to use, and you can keep leveling up Teguk so that it goes well beyond the benefit of Bane of the Powerful. But if you're not MLG, then I think 2 other good options here are going to be Bane of the Powerful, which most people are like, well, it basically tapers off after level 25, right? Basically, you get that 15% bonus damage, and then you are basically done with the gem because the additional time isn't going to make that much of a difference. I disagree. I think that the bonus time on the gem can be really handy if you plan to be full clearing rifts, which you can do if you're going a multi-shot Demon Hunter, right? Not a lot of people do this. Most people will just move to the elites, kill them, and move on. I like to full clear because I'm in hardcore and it's generally safer in my mind. But the risk is that you risk running out of time, and you're not going to be winning the leaderboard time doing a full clear. So for me, if you're going to be, killing an elite pack every 20 to 45 seconds rather than every 15 to 20 seconds, then the additional time on Bane of the Powerful means that you just always keep your 35% bonus damage, 15% to elites and 20% general pure bonus damage. You can also go for the Esoteric Alteration, which is basically don't die to Arcane quite so much. This is much more important in hardcore. If you're in softcore, forget about it. But yeah, generally you're going to be using Teguk or like Bane of the Powerful or what? Oh, the other option here would be, where is it? Oh, I don't even know where this gem is offhand. It's not one I'm planning to use anytime soon, but it's the kill the Rift Guardians faster one. Here it is. Bane of the Stricken is the other option here. When you're in the really high end, basically when you're pushing past 65, if your DPS is not enough to be one-shotting elites, which it probably won't be, then this begins to actually, you begin to notice the bonus damage to this, and then you also get that 25% bonus damage against bosses and Rift Guardians. That can really make a difference at the end of a Rift when you are pushing past Greater Rift 60. So yeah, 65, 70, 75, that's when you really start to see people using Bane of the Stricken. Before then, not really so much. Not to say it's bad, I mean, but generally things are dying so fast before then that you don't really get to feel the effect of that each attack you make is worth it. So yeah, gems are complicated, but they are an important part of what's going on. So I think I've gone over skills now. I've gone over the cube. If you are doing solo greater rifts, it's important to also not completely forget about your companion. Generally, I think you want, if you're a demon hunter, I think you want the scoundrel. You want the all access to skills one. You don't really care if he dies every now and then. What you really want is him, when he is alive, to be doing the hysteria, so that you get the 3% bonus damage. Whenever you or the scoundrel land a critical hit, when you're doing multi-shot, this will just always be up. It's 3% bonus damage, in addition to 1.8% critical hit chance. So you want this one, and then beyond that, I actually gave him a win force. Not a legendary, or not an ancient legend, because who cares? He's not going to be doing any damage anyway. But he has a 44% chance of knockback. Now, the reason I would do this is because my Demon Hunter is awkwardly geared. A little bit suboptimal. This other stuff is mostly just whatever. You want to equip your scoundrel. The bow slightly matters. Everything beyond that doesn't really matter. Now, as I said, if you have an ancient Manticore, you're going to be using an ancient Manticore. If you have an ancient Yang's recurve, you're probably going to be using an ancient Yang's recurve. I don't have an ancient Yang's recurve, and I don't have an ancient Manticore. What I have is an ancient Wind Force. So on the Wind Force, it doesn't give you bonus damage to something specific, like multi-shot or cluster arrow, but it does give you the 37% chance to knockback. That can be really handy when you're in hardcore mode, and having enemies real close to you is bad. And it combos with the Strong Arm Bracers, which gives 24%, that's kind of a low roll, but 24% bonus damage when enemies are knocked back. So that's the way I'm doing it, because I don't have the better weapon, which would be an Ancient Manticore or an Ancient Yang's. One of those two would generally be what you would go with. But when you don't have the ideal high-end gear, you can make do. You can get by without one of those better weapons. You're going to want to be using an ancient bow. Preferably something better than a Cluck Eye or an Uskang, but especially since lightning isn't really a thing with Demon Hunter right now. Some people do this stuff with where they're going to combo. If you're not going Restraint and Focus, you could go Nats with the Ring and like have Vengeance or Rain of Vengeance up pretty much all the time. That's cool if you want to do that. But most of the time, if you get the Ancient Yang's or really the Ancient Manticore, I think Ancient Manticore is the top of the high end. I think that's the ideal in-game main hand weapon. Now, I'm using Marauders, so do you want to use Marauders, or do you want to use the Unhallowed Essence? There are two other sets. There's Natalia's and there's Shadows. Shadows is basically what you start out with, because you're going to get most of that set from your Seasonal Journey. So you will get it, so you'll be using it toward the start, so that you have the protection from Shadow Power before you have the combination of Dawn and Visage of Goons in your cube. You know, before that happens, you have to have something to be able to get that gear. And so what you do is you use Shadow's Coil with the Shadow Power protection, and then you use Impale to kill elites, and you farm Torment 1 to Torment 6, basically whatever you're comfortable with and can do most efficiently. And then you get geared enough that you can jump into Torment 10. There's also Natalia's, which some people really like, because with the ring and the bow, and then one other set piece with a Ring of Royal Grandeur, you can actually get a 4-piece Natalia set bonus in combination with either Marauders or Fiendish, or Unhallowed Essence. So that's really the main appeal of Natalia's. I don't think most people really do 6-piece Natalia's as a thing, except for the set dungeon. I guess you could do a 6-piece Natalia's with a 4-piece Fiendish, but why would you? I think that it. I'm sure there's a way, maybe for someone can make it work better, but most of the time I think that you'd rather go with the 6-piece benefit of Unhallowed. So, why would you go Unhallowed versus Marauders? If you are going Marauders, there are certain items that make you tankier, namely Zoe's Secret. Basically, in combination with Marauders, this is 36% damage reduction. 36% damage reduction in hardcore mode is big. in softcore, maybe you're gonna want to go. You do get damage reduction here. You get 60% damage reduction from from the Unhallowed Essence. Here you're getting 36% damage reduction from the belt, but you're also getting. So this is what actually confuses me. So you have 2 additional sentries from the Bombardiers, and you have. Yeah, so you increase the maximum number of charges of sentry to 3. And then you have the Bombardier's Rucksack, so you get 5 total sentries. So then with Marauders, you get 5 times 600% damage. You get, 3,000% damage on multi-shot. Or Cluster Arrow if you have a Manticore. And your companions, which in this case are handy, but are not, it's mostly the multi-shot. So the thing about this is that you basically are going to be running, you're certainly going to be running Vault rather than Smokescreen, because if you ever get surrounded, you're going to lose the, if you ever get surrounded for 10 seconds, you're going to lose that 60% damage reduction, at which point you will melt. But I think that this is the one that is pretty viable here, because both of these 2 sets are going to give you additional damage reduction, which in hardcore mode is going to be big. If you're in softcore, yeah, go Natalia's, go Shadows. No, Shadows actually also gives you damage reduction. It's really just Natalia's that is leaving you ready to die, basically. I guess if you're really concerned about damage reduction, you could probably find a way to do the 4-piece Shadows with the 2-piece Marauders with Zoe's Secret, and you could get you could get 96% damage reduction with the 4-piece Fiendish, with the 2-piece Marauders, and then the belt. But generally, you're going to be sacrificing way too much damage for that to be worth it. So yeah, you do have some options with the gear, mainly between Marauders and the Unhallowed, as you kind of go up. Other things to bear in mind with the difference here is if you are disconnected, if you don't have a 100% stable internet connection, and you're in hardcore mode, at that point Marauders, I think, becomes much, much better, because your companions and your Zoe's Secret will continue to be effective even if you are doing the 10-second logout. Whereas if you're in Hellborn, it's going to be gone in exactly 10 seconds. And, no. 8 seconds. You have 8 seconds. So basically for 2 seconds before you get disconnected, you're going to be susceptible to 100% enemy damage. And, that's not good. But if you're on more stable internet connection or just don't care as much, go whichever one. So, yeah, I think that is just about it. Oh, yeah, so The shadow set, you don't want to just melt your shadow set. You do want to use the shadow set if you, for some reason, don't have what it takes to otherwise kill Diablo in under a minute and a half. Because the 40,000% weapon damage on Impale will kill Diablo on Torment 10 in under a minute and a half. It's not very challenging. I would hang on to the Natalias, just, I do have an ancient Natalia Slayer, and I'm like kind of thinking, maybe I'll want to do something if I'm like farming Torment 10 or something, just want to mess around. This is like all my monk gear, but with some Donetta stuff, in case I decide to bring that in. Here's all my ancient legends and just some random stuff. I don't know why I haven't sold these yet. I don't think they do anything, but sometimes I'm OCD about that. When I did complete everything, I did get the bonus stash tab here, and so this is the new stash tab I got from completing the Conqueror. It's so empty and clean and pure. I think that's about it, yeah. Obviously, continuing to farm up all this stuff is really important. Continuing to get those Ramaladni's gifts can be quite handy. But at the end of the day, what's going to be most important for your character is just farming the gear efficiently to get the Marauder set or the Unhallowed Essence set. Either way. Well, I hope that was informative, and I hope you guys take it easy. Have a great day. Alright, hopefully this catches in the end of that last stream. I just remembered that I forgot to indicate the how to do the Conqueror achievements very easily. So with the Conquests, here are the two I did. The thing about Avaridia is that it will happen basically as soon as you hit a Gilded Baron in Torment 10. So you don't really need to worry about this one too much. It's just going to happen. And bearing that in mind, honestly, I think the easiest way to get 2 Conquests done is to roll a softcore character and a hardcore character. Walk around Torment 10 just doing whatever. You don't even need to be like the main carry. Like if you're in a public game, like a ZDVS monk or something, you can probably get Avarice and Avaridia done very safely, very easily, just, as soon as you find a Gilded Baron with a little bit of, like, I don't even think you need that much gold find on. And so that's going to be how you're going to get the Conquests done. So really the main challenge in my mind is gonna be doing the other stuff. Now, if you don't want to make a softcore character because you're irrational, like me, then I rolled a couple of other hardcore characters. So I did 8 set dungeons. I did all the Demon Hunter ones, and then I did 2 wizard and 2 monk ones, because completing Ina's and Uliana's just was starting to become a pain. But honestly, to get 2 Conquests done the by far fastest, even if you want to do these, like the time it's going to take you to finish all these set dungeons, you could just roll a softcore character, get it to 70, get into Torment 10, because it doesn't matter if you die, right, in softcore. All you're doing is getting to 70 and then, oh wait, no, you have to get Paragon levels. Well, I mean, it would still go relatively fast. But now that I think about it, yeah, I guess it would feel very frustrating to roll either a hardcore or a softcore character to get into Torment 10 if you primarily play one or the other. Certainly doing the set dungeons is... It's certain, on your main, it will become not too bad to do the set dungeons. The main thing about doing set dungeons is you should be doing greater rifts first. You want to get your gems up. You want to be getting just better gear overall. Basically, your main hand, your offhand, your rings and amulet are all going to need to be pretty good to be doing one of these set dungeons, because otherwise you will find your DPS is too low from changing your gear around and using a build you're less familiar with. It can be fun, but yeah, and some of these are much easier than others. Shadow's Mantle, very or not easy exactly, but not too bad. Compared to a lot of the other ones. The main problem with Shadows, as is the main problem with most of them, is not missing any creeps. But actually, with this, if you have a good friend, or you can find a good friend that can go into set dungeons with you, they can go into the dungeon. So long as you initiate the rift, you will be the one getting credit, and you don't want to, like, be incorrect or deceive them that they will be completing the set dungeon even if they don't have the gear. The only person who gets credit for the set dungeon, even if you have 2 wizards in Tal Rasha's, for instance, the one who will get credit is the one who initiates the rift. But both wizards can enter Tal Rasha's, and so then you only have to complete the main objectives, and killing everything else can be done by your friend. So that's very important in Raiment of a Thousand Storms. That's very important in Shadow's Mantle. And very important in Embodiment of the Marauder, where there's all the damn rockworms. Natalia's is probably the easiest set dungeon, period. Kill everything, the end. Like, it's really a one objective set dungeon. Unhallowed, oh, that's the one with the spiders. Yeah, that one was kind of stupid. That one I don't think you can really get that much help on, because the main thing is hitting a bunch of well-grouped creeps multiple times. And so, yeah, if you actually go in with a monk, it might be a little easier, but it's still not going to be the easiest one regardless. Natalia's is going to be the easiest set dungeon, period. Firebirds is silly, mostly. The one where you die and have to hit creeps with your death meteor, that's actually the easy part. The harder one is getting your DPS right to get all the creeps to burn at the same time. Yeah, I don't know. I had to tweak gear a lot to make that one really effective. And Tel Rasha's is another one with rockworms, which makes it exceptionally stupid when you're doing